Hello, book besties. Welcome back. January is finally over, and it felt like it lasted an eternity, but it's gone. It's behind us, and we are ready to move on into a new reading month. So today we're going to be wrapping up January. But before that, I do have to say my apologies because I said I was going to post a couple videos on my previous video that I posted, I think, the first week of January, and I have not been done that. I had some editing issues, and now I have to record again everything that I recorded, but that's fine. We'll get to it when we get to it. For now, we are going to be wrapping up January. I'm going to talk to you about all the books that I read because I actually had a really good reading month. I wasn't doing a lot of YouTube recording and whatnot this month, but I spent a lot of time reading. So I have a combination between physical, audiobook, and ebooks, and that is amazing because that's rare when I actually managed to do that. So we're gonna jump right in and we're gonna talk about all the books that I read this month. Okay, we are going to dive into the 10 books that I read in January as I am attempting to make breakfast. So if you hear a lot of noise, that's me. You might also hear my cat in the background because she wants to come into the kitchen and I am not letting her because obviously I'm working with food here, so we don't want the cat in here. But anyway, let's dive into the books. Let me grab a napkin here. Okay. First book that I finished this month was Ruthless Vows. And that is the second book in the Divine Rivals duology. It is honestly probably one of my favorite duologies. It's gonna go really up in the list of favorite books and also really up in the list of books that I recommend people. I have a thing for dark academia in general, but I think the concept in dark academia in this book, it's different from books like The Sacred History, If We Were Villains, because those are dark academia murder mysteries kind of thing. I might be wrong, and maybe Divine Rivals is not dark academia, but I think it is. It's just that academic rivals, kind of the world is the mystery kind of thing, rather than just like people being unalived. There's a lot of magical aspects to it. It's very much a fantasy, in my opinion. You have your enemies to lovers that have a very interesting connection that I'm not going to mention because you need to read the books to know. There is a magical typewriter situation going on, which is honestly any book person / especially any writer person biggest dream. They're amazing. That concept is really, really cool. And obviously there's a lot of political, environmental things going on that get in the way, not only of each character's purpose and what they're trying to do, but also in the way of the whole enemies to lovers situation, which honestly I think is the coolest. I feel like there's a lot of books that they typically touch onto the enemies to lovers thing, and it tends to be kind of not linear, but kind of predictable. And it typically tends to be things just with the two characters, whatever rivalry they have going on, be it family dynamics or be it academic rivals like in this case, or some situation that is it feels personal. It feels like they hate each other for personal, individual reasons. Whereas in this book, they do have that academic rivalry. They do have that whole situation with them trying to be like hating each other directly, but there's also environmental stuff that really play a big role in it. And it's like we go from enemies to lovers, and then the world doesn't want us to be able to be together kind of thing, which I think was absolutely amazing, very romantic, but also very emotional. There was a lot of things getting in the way of them being happy, and it was just so sad. Like, I felt so many emotions while I was reading those books. I feel like that was partially the reason why I love them so much, because I need a book to make me feel things. If it doesn't make me feel things, I get bored. it kept me interested, and it also kept me feeling the emotions of the characters. Like, I really got into the story. So I think that that's why I really, really loved that series, because it's just interesting, complicated. It has a lot of very cool aspects to just like details in the story, and then the enemies to lovers and everything that went on with them. Absolutely fantastic. So obviously high up in the books that I would recommend someone to read. And also it was, I think, one of the more simpler to read Dark Academia books, because I've read Dark Academia books that are much more complicated, and you really have to be into the genre to really understand what the heck is going on. But this book felt like a good introduction, I guess, to Dark Academia. I'm not sure if they're categorized YA. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But definitely a good book for someone that hasn't really been into the Dark Academia genre for too long or at all. I love that it's Dark Academia fantasy, so honestly, highly, highly recommend. We have a bit of a change of scenery slash change of lighting here, so apologies if this looks weird. Hopefully it doesn't, but I will know when I actually go and edit this video. Anyway, second book I read in January, Daydream, which is the third book in the Icebreaker series. And this is very interesting because I didn't actually like Icebreaker, which honestly breaks my heart, because I tend to love sports romances, and especially if they're like college level sports romances, which I think these are, if I'm not mistaken. Are they? They might not be. Actually, scratch that, because I don't remember. But Icebreaker was okay. Wildfire was better, but I actually didn't intend to read Wildfire because I didn't like Icebreaker. But then Daydream came out and everyone was talking about it, and I thought it was a separate series. So when I figured out that it was part of the Icebreaker series, I said to myself, I can't just skip Wildfire, and I really want to give this a chance. So as I expected, Icebreaker is just whatever for me, no offense. Wildfire was okay, was better, and then Daydream was good. Like, that one I really, really enjoyed. So I'm very glad that I didn't let Icebreaker get in the way of me continuing the series, because honestly, as the series progressed, it got better for me. So I do recommend it. It was really cute, and I love the fact that the main character, one of the main characters, deals with kind of like mental health stuff. And the way that it's handled, I feel like I saw myself in it. Like I felt identified, represented by the book, and correctly represented, at least in my experience. So definitely really enjoyed that part. And obviously the romance was really cute. Like, it was just really sweet, very nice. So I liked it. That's all I have to say. I like that series. For the third book that I read in January, I actually went the nonfiction way. And I read On Censorship, which is, as the title suggests, a book on censorship. And it focuses on public libraries and just all the attempts of people to ban books, challenge books, and basically keep other people from having access to books that they obviously want to be reading and need to be reading. I feel like instead of people trying to expand their minds and get educated in different topics that they might not understand, they just go and attack them. And this book focuses on that, focuses on people that pretty much want to discriminate against other people. There's basically all these groups that obviously we know in the political climate that we're living, they get attacked constantly. And libraries are probably one of the main places where that happens, because some libraries, some districts, some states allow people to challenge and ultimately prove their case to ban books. And you can go into the American Library Association website and look at the books that are being banned, and you'll get your answer as to what's going on. Like, there's not much I can dive into that because I'm not an expert in the topic. But again, that's the reason why I'm reading books like that, because I want to understand more of what's going on. And as someone that does want to work in a library eventually, obviously I feel like those are things I need to be aware of. But that is not the focus of this video, so obviously I'm not going to dive into that right now. I could maybe make a video later, but I feel like I need to be more prepared to talk about that topic before I actually dive into talking about it. At least video form. I do talk about this with people. But yeah, if you want to learn more about what's going on in libraries, the importance of libraries also, because that's also another aspect. Why are libraries important? Public libraries and libraries in general, but public libraries, why are they important for the community? Why are they threatened so much? And you know, how can you do a little bit? Just do your part to make sure that you continue to support your library so it gets more funding and it continues to stay. Because spoiler, libraries are not just places to get books. I'll leave you with that. Go and do your research and find out why libraries are important and what impacts they do in the community, because they do a lot. They do a lot more than people realize. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm going to move on to the next book, but keep that in mind because that is an important thing, especially with everything that's going on right now. For the fourth book, I went back into fiction and read Iron Flame. And yes, I know, it took me far too long. Yes, it was my first read through. It was not a reread. I did reread the first 21 chapters because I had started the book when it came out. And then I don't know why I got into a reading slump and stopped reading it. So I had to read other stuff. And it took me until I think October or November of 2024 to actually dive back into the book. So because so many months had passed, I had to restart it, which was fine because my friend was starting it. And we were buddy reading it. Now, when I really got into the story, and especially when I got the audiobook from the library, I just flew through the entire thing. He hasn't read it just yet. He hasn't finished it because he has a lot of school stuff. Obviously, that takes priority. So I'm just here living vicariously through him whenever he texts me about something that's going on in the book. And I'm like excited just to see him go through the emotions, because I went through all of those emotions in like 2 days when I got the audiobook. Obviously, I absolutely loved the book. 5 stars, you know. And I already do have Onyx Storm. I just haven't started it because, one, I do have a birthday trip coming up and I don't want to have to stop reading like in the middle. And I don't want to take the book with me, at least not that one. And I do have a book that I'm planning on buying in that trip, and I want to focus on that. And I feel kind of weird about taking the book with me anywhere because it's a special edition and I don't want to lose it. So, you know, we're taking care of the book. So that book is staying here and I'm not going to start it until I come back from my trip. So I have to be very careful with social media because of the spoilers. So I've been trying not to like anything so the algorithm doesn't feed me more Onyx Storm related stuff. But I will get to it eventually. I need to take it easy. And also I don't want to have so much time in between Onyx Storm and whatever comes after, because I don't think we even know what's coming after. We just know that there's going to be 5 books, or at least I haven't seen anything about release dates for the next book. So I need to take it easy. I know a lot of people already read it and they have been going through it because of what happened. So I'm also mentally preparing myself because I feel like it's going to be a very, very intense book. So that's the thing with Iron Flame, Onyx Storm. I did obviously love Iron Flame. It was a 5 stars. I went back into nonfiction for the next book and I read a book called How to Sound Smart in Parties, I think. And you know, if you follow me on Threads, you know that I go to a library a lot. I spend a lot of time in the library. And I like just bringing books home because I feel like the more books, or I know that the more books we check out of the library, the better it is for the library, because that gives the county or whoever's in charge, it tells them, hey, people do like this library and these resources are of value for the community. So using the library, using your library card is very important. So I like to check out books for the fun of it. And sometimes I find funky books like that I just bring them home and just look through them. And because I do the commonplace in journaling, it's great because I can get just random facts and write them down on my journal. So I find that really fun. So that's what I did with that book. And basically that book is just a whole bunch of different facts about random stuff. And it's written as if you were in the party and there's people having a conversation about the topics. I just thought that was so much fun. And yes, I fact checked the things that were on the book. Like I was Googling as I was reading. And I found out the craziest stuff ever, like historical things, scientific stuff. There were so many fun facts. There were a lot of funny stuff, but also a lot of very interesting things to think about. So I would recommend you checking it out, or not even necessarily that one, just like any book that looks like that is kind of like a facts all put together kind of book. Check out those books from the library because they're really fun and you actually learn a lot from them, and you don't have to feel like you're deep diving into a topic and it's gonna be boring, it's gonna take forever. So I feel like those are also books that if there's something that stands out to you, you can go and then do a deep dive into whatever topic that stands out for you. Because I feel like it's the kind of thing where you might not even be aware of something and then you find out about it, and then it's like all this knowledge that you can get. So it was a really fun book. I'm going to continue looking for books like that in the library because I just really enjoy them. At that point in the month, I feel like I was in a nonfiction kick for some reason, because then I read Habits, something like that. And it's exactly what the book sounds like the title sounds like. It's a book about forming habits and why it is important. I can't say I remember to the T what the book was about, but I can definitely tell you that the way that you manage your days has a lot of impact in how you're going to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Obviously, this is not so much about the goal itself, it's more about the process. And the things that we do on a daily basis do have consequences on how soon or if we're actually going to get to whatever it is that we want to achieve. I'm not going to deep dive into that book because honestly I feel like it's just gonna turn the video boring, so we're not gonna get into that. But highly recommended. I do really like reading self-helpy kind of books, but I'm very careful with which ones I read, and I feel like this was a good one. It definitely gave me good information and good steps that I could take, rather than just going on and on dragging about a topic. So it was dynamic, it was an interesting book, and I think it did have some valuable information, so I do recommend checking it out. The next book that I read, oh my gosh, I am obsessed. It's called A Darker Mischief, or A Dark Mischief, something like that. This is, again, the Dark Academia YA book of your dreams. It is an LGBTQ representation book. There's two boys, and one of them is like the rich, really popular kind of boy, and then the other one is your typical outcast. And they're actually in a high school, I think. It's like a private academy kind of thing. It was giving Gossip Girl. It was giving, what's the other book? If We Were Villains, but in high school. It was giving, what's the other? Maxton Hall, I think is that Netflix series. And I think that's also a book series. It was so good. I love the romance. I love the complicated secret society thing going on. It was, if you're Hispanic and you know about Rebelde, La Logia, that's the vibe. That is exactly the vibe that book had. And it was so cute. It was so romantic, and it was so complicated, and there were so many emotions. Like, I was obsessed. I think I told everyone that could listen to me about this book because it was so freaking good. Like, 5 billion stars, honestly. It was just the cutest freaking thing. But it was also so dark and so mischievous, and there was just a lot going on. So, needless to say that I recommend it. It was so freaking insane. Like, I'm still thinking about that book. That book stuck to me, and the same as with Ruthless Vows / Divine Rivals, that book is going to be very high up in the books that I recommend because of just the deep story that it has. Like, it's not just a romance, it's not just the society. There's a lot of aspects to it, and I especially love the fact that the book really focuses on the importance of history and how the people that join that society they're just seeking knowledge. So they make the people that are joining the society look through the university. It's like a giant scavenger hunt. they're looking through the university for historical facts, and they present to each other what they find. And even if a place has already been explored, they go again and explore it, because they say that when new people go and see it, you're always gonna find something different, which is amazing, because it talks about how as humans we all have different perspectives, and we can all bring value to something even if it seems like it's already been like overdone, or there's enough knowledge about it. So I am absolutely obsessed with that book. If I keep going, I will keep going. And this video is gonna be like 5 hours long, because it's such an amazing book. I don't want to give spoilers also, so I'm gonna stop talking, because if not, I'm just gonna give away the entire book. Next book I read was 888 Love and the Divine Burden of Numbers. And this is an Asian American book focusing on a Chinese American main character. He goes through all of his loves. And by that, I mean, when he was very young, his uncle told him that everyone is meant to have 7 loves in life. And the 7th one is your true love that you're meant to stay with. He, as someone who loves numbers, he has lived his life, the entirety of his life, focusing on numbers. Lucky ones, unlucky ones, the ones that look good, the ones that don't look as good. And there's a lot of meaning behind each of the numbers. And it's just a very kind of complicated thing, because I don't really understand it much, but I think this is a very big thing in Chinese culture, if I'm not mistaken. But the book takes you through all of his loves, so you get a glance into the past, and then you get a glance into the present and the girl that he's currently going out with, and you get to see how they meet and how that relationship develops. And it's just such a wonderful book, because it doesn't just touch on his love life. It touches on his relationship with his family. It touches on his relationship with his identity, with his culture. There's so many layers to this book that I think it gives you a good idea of what it feels like to live in the diaspora, and just, getting to know other cultures. I think that's one of the really big things about this book, that you really get to dive and understand that culture. And I just loved it. It was so freaking cute. The character development was so amazing. Like, the book was so well written. Like, I devoured that book. It was such a wonderful read. So I don't want to spoil it, but there's so many fun things to it, and there's some funny things going on. It's kind of like a comedy, but it's so romantic. But then there's so many deep rooted feelings that you can get through the story as well. Like, there's just so many layers to it. I loved it. It was so good. Last book that I finished, not last book of the month, was The Little Prince. And the reason why I read this is kind of funny, because I've been meaning to read it, because I never read it when I was a kid. And people keep saying that you have to read that book. One of my friends, that's one of her favorite books. So I figured, let me just listen to it, because it was available in the library through Libby. And I had to do my hair. And this takes over an hour to do. So I needed to listen to something. I just played the audiobook, and it was cute. It was fun. I can definitely see why people recommend the book, because it has a lot of very important lessons. I just enjoyed it. Like, I can't say it was all-time favorite kind of book, but I definitely feel like if I had read it as a kid, that would have been a book that would have stuck with me. It would have been a book that I would look back into, and I would say, oh, that's one of my favorite all-time books, because of the deep meanings behind everything that happens. And it's a really short book. I think the audiobook is 2 hours, and I read it like in an hour and a half. So super easy read. I mean, it's a kid's book, but it was really cute, and it was a nice thing to finish in the month of January. A good book to set the tone for the next month coming. Finally, the last book that I plan to finish today, and I just have to finish that, honestly. Like, probably after I finish recording this, I'm gonna go finish it. That is Vile Boys, and that is the third, I think, final, I'm not sure, book in the Spine Ridge University series, if I'm not mistaken. If you like dark romance, you already know where this is going. I'm not going to talk too much about what kind of book this is, but just know that it's dark romance. It is very explicit. It is very violent, but it's really good. I don't know. It's just one of those books that you just find interesting, and you just read it and you're like, why am I reading this? But you're enjoying it, kind of thing. I don't know. It's just a fun read. So I actually read the second book before I read the first one because I got influenced by TikTok, and then realized that I started in the middle of the series. So I read the first one. And now I read the third one because it came out, I think, last year. I think it was something similar to what happened with the Icebreaker series, that I really didn't necessarily enjoy the first book, but because I read the second book first, in this case, when I read the first one, it didn't affect the story, and two, it just didn't feel like the first book affected me wanting to read the rest. So because of the second book, I actually fell in love with the series. And so when I read the third one, I realized that the third one is the best one. So same as with Daydream, Vile Boys is the best one. It's Sick Boys, Evil Boys, and then Vile Boys. And by far, Vile Boys was the best book. And I'm saying this as I still have like 50 pages left of the book. But I can assure you, it's been great. I think it has been a lot more intense than the other books. So, you do with that what you will. But I do recommend it only if you're an adult and only if you like explicit stuff, because this is definitely not a book for a lot of people. I feel like if you get grossed out by things quickly, don't, just go read something else. Honestly, stay away from that genre in general. Like, if you like regular soft romance, go for your average, more rom-com-y kind of thing. But if you want really dark things and you're into that kind of stuff, dark romance, and definitely that series is a really good one. I haven't read a lot of dark romance, so I can't really compare it with other ones. That's the only point of reference that I have. So I can't really say if it is good or not compared to the genre itself, but at least I enjoyed it. So that's all I can say. Those are all the books I read in the month of January, and I am getting ready to, not create a TBR because I know a TBR is not going to work for me, but I'm getting ready to dive into more romance books in February, and I'm excited about it also because it's my birthday month. So I'm going to be gifting myself a book, and this is not going to be a surprise if you've been following me on social media, but I am obsessed with books by B.K. Borison. They are romances. And if you've heard of the Love Light Farms series, that's her. That's the author. She's coming out with First Time Caller. And it's coming out during my birthday trip. So you know that I'm going to be gifting myself that book. And I'm going to be visiting, hopefully, an independent bookstore in a new town that I've never been to. So I can't even tell you what bookstore it's going to be because I don't know. But I'm so freaking excited for that book to come out, and just go and buy it in person, not like pre-ordering and having to wait for it to get to my house. So I'm very excited about that. Other than that, I have another book that I'm going to be starting today when I finish Vile Boys, which is La Tercera Rebelión. And I'm very excited about that because I requested that book at my library for purchase, and they bought it immediately, and to me that means the world. Especially because it's a book by a Puerto Rican author. And I don't live in Puerto Rico anymore. So the fact that I can get a library here where I live to bring books from Puerto Rico, to me, that is amazing. So I am so excited to dive into the book. I went yesterday to get it when they sent me an email that the hold was ready. And I couldn't even believe that it was so quick from when I requested it to when they got the book. So I need to finish Vile Boys quickly so I can start that book, because it's a book about a post-apocalyptic Puerto Rico. And it's kind of like sci-fi and fantasy as far as I know. And I just think it's gonna be so much fun because I don't really get to read a lot of non-historical books about Puerto Rico. And especially not really fun books like that take place in Puerto Rico. Now, I do have a list of books that I'm going to be diving into because I asked on Threads and a lot of Puerto Rican authors answered. So I have a whole list of books that I'm going to be looking into because I didn't know about these authors. Most of them are indie authors. So I'm going to be looking into them. I'm making an Excel sheet and everything so I can keep track of which ones I got recommended and like how many books are in the series and per author and like which ones I read already and all that stuff. So I'm going to be doing that, but I'm going to start by reading this book by Jay Del Trono, because he was the first one that I found on social media. So because he's the OG one that I discovered and fell in love with the concept of his book, I'm going to be diving into that book, and I'm going to try my best to finish it before I have to go on my birthday trip, because I don't have a long time until I have to go. And because it's a library book, I don't want to take it out of town. So I'm going to try my best to devour that book before the trip. So yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.